Hey there guys, Spazzy here aka Syndrems, and welcome back to the 5th video of our Discovery Freelancer Let's Play. So, with Bruno currently enjoying the hospitality of the Marshals, we are left without a character for the time being. In the previous episode, I did mention that I wanted to have a certain character return and make an appearance in this Let's Play, so today we are going to do exactly that. So, in the previous episode, I also did a very good thing in the sense of creating a trading character that is going to basically sponsor all of our other things. Meet the Formal Display of Contentment. Now, this ship exists purely for the reason of making money. It is a trading ship, it is going to be mining and trading things for us, and simply funding our other characters. I am of the opinion that I'm most likely not going to do anything role-playing related with this thing, like specifically. If I encounter someone in-game, it is going to result in very simplistic kind of hello, 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 whatever roleplay, but if I'm on that character, it's just for the sake of making credits. Also, one thing to note is that this name, you will probably note that it's going to probably change, simply because on my trade-specific characters, especially when the server population is low enough during the low hours, I want to kind of retain a sense of anonymity. I don't want people to know it's me. So, with that in mind, let's make a character called Tempe, name 3 or 2 or whatever. And let's very quickly set up that character. Okay, here we are. We are in Omicron Theta. And the reason why we are using this restart is simple. We want the Spatial. This, back in my day, used to be the ugliest and the most useless ship, and that was what the Firestalker drone player faction used. And yes, that's it. I'm going to bring back my Firestalker drone. Now, for those of you who remember this faction, I probably don't need to make any introductions, but for those of you who don't, I'm going to make this remarkably simple. So back in the day, there were basically two types of non-human factions that players could actually play. One was the Nomads, and second you had the AI. And honestly, I never liked both. Or rather, I never liked either of them. The idea of playing a human character but simply using asterisks to kind of convey a different type of sound when they speak was pretentious at best and kind of silly at worst. It was all that we had back in like early 2000s, sorry, late 2000s, back when, you know, the Nomads actually became a playable faction. But I was thinking that, you know, by the end of like 2017, 2018, we probably had better ways to do it. You really sounded so outdated. And so, I created the Firestalker drones as a anti-faction to them. And so, honestly, there is not an easier way to describe what they were than to bring up my very old write-up of the Firestalker drones. Incidentally, this is how the old image looked. And as you can see, this was made in early 2018. So, instead of basically describing what exactly they were, I'm going to be a complete cop-out and just read the introduction text. Welcome to the Firestalker drones trademark recruitment feedback update thread. Brought to you by Prosper Industries. More about Prosper a bit later. These drones are a hope, interesting twist and approach to non-human, but also not quite AI roleplay. We have seen our fair share of non-human roleplay, and I'm sad to say that I've personally grown rather tired of the whole asterisk-ridden representation of what is considered non-human speech in these encounters, and the sheer lack of fantasy and imagination in the characters themselves. I have personally always found AI roleplay potentially fun because you are playing an entity with a consciousness and rationalization based on math, which can be unempathetic and brutal at times. An AI would easily save a civilian transport from a pirate, but then destroyed the damaged ship because the possibility of it making to the nearest dock was too low, and a quick death to all passengers on board would be more humane. However, the level of AI roleplay in Discovery tends to boil down to what we have now called toaster speech. Mind you, this was like 3 years ago. Maybe things have changed by now. And this in by itself is the very source of the first write-up of the Firestalker drones back in the early 2010s. The Firestalker drones are based on the notion that playing a completely static, predetermined character with absolutely no input on your part as a player might be a fun experience. So, what does this mean? It means we are going to be role-playing a character that has very little self-thought. It is a combat drone, and the roleplay behind the Firestalker drones from a write-up level was simple. David Prosper was the creator of the Firestalker drone software. Its basic purpose was very similar to what we have these days as an argument for having self-driving cars. You know that self-driving cars are not perfect. They are not better than, a lot of good drivers, right? That AI cars will crash as well, of course, and, mistakes happen. But the thing is, you don't need a perfect vehicle. You just need a vehicle that is better than the average driver, and that is not hard to do. And this was the same idea behind the Firestalker drones and Prosper Industries. So basically what he did, he took a relatively sturdy, relatively powerful civilian ship as a frame and basically installed a very rudimentary software on top of the autopilot. So this drone can accept bounty contracts, and it can perform very simple inputs such as attack this, attack that, follow me, disengage, etc., etc. And the amazing thing, and my most amazing experience about this character, was that when this faction was established enough, and you must understand that this means that it's a drone, it has no concept of diplomacy. It would fly into a fight between the Navy and the Rogues, and either side could hire them, and it actually got to a point where people understand that these things are so impersonal, they are so unbiased that they are basically tools, that you had moments where these things would attack Liberty Navy players if they were hired by the Rogues, but the moment they killed their target, if they killed their target, the moment they killed their target, the Navy would instantly hire them to attack the Rogues. It was that amazing. So basically, it was one of those amazing moments where just sheer, straightforward roleplay relations like this ended up with situations where a Firestalker drone would fly into Liberty, lawful space, even though it has previously been, hired by a criminal, and the Liberty lawful players would not attack it or treat it hostile because it is just what it is. So they would just hire it instead so that no one else could hire it instead. And these drones, we try to play them very straightforward in that sense that these things were not fun to kill. So in other words, if someone did try to shoot them because they were shot by them at some point instead, this thing can only do those few commands. Attack target, do this, do that. If this thing was attacked by someone, it wouldn't even shoot back. There was no concept of self-preservation in these things. And it took a very specific kind of person to actually like playing something like this. You must understand that. It is basically a gag character, but I think that we did a very good job with it. So, with that in mind, let's actually set it up. So we are going to transfer some money from the formal display of contentment to Tempe name 2. and we are just going to set it up. Now, back in the day, it was called a Firestalker drone simply because the Firestalker missiles were the best tracking missiles. And these things were great for what was essentially kill stealing. Now, the one major thing about this character is that in terms of roleplay interactions with players, my vocabulary is highly limited. Now, if we take a look at the drone manual again, you'll notice that we have this section over here called Behavior and Roleplay. By the way, this is not a plug for the Firestalker Drones player faction because it does not exist anymore. And I have no reason to think that I'm going to redo it. So, this is basically what it boils down to. The player's character is one of many Firestalker drone models produced and operated by Prosper Industries. A drone is exactly what you think it is, a completely automated weapon with highly basic actions. Your overall purpose when flying a drone from an RP standpoint is to seek out potential patrons, shoot, heal, escort, target, execute command, get paid. One of the most defining points is that the group is quasi-lawful. Oh, this is basically what I talk about. But yeah, this is the full list of roleplay. This is the short version of the drone dictionary. This is all the stuff that I can physically say. This is all that my roleplay is limited to. And I have to make this into set messages now. Set message 1. Beep. Set message 2. A different kind of beep. Oh. Okay, no, everything's fine. It's gonna be fine. Set message 3. Combat drone for hire. Set message 4, which is... No, sorry. Set message 0, which is, by the way, the most used thing, because people try to roleplay with this thing, and they really try to, like, treat this character as something that it isn't. So, this one is... Error... Unknown command. Beautiful. Now, the one thing to remember about this whole thing is that we were using specifically god-awful ships. Like, spatials were very easy to destroy with a bomber, for example. Like, these things were not supposed to be lethal, because that was kind of the, you know, roleplay behind it. These things were expendable, they were not smart, and they were obviously not better than a very good pilot, but they had to be just good enough where you could just hire them and just throw them at the enemy without any problems. And the whole, you know, fun thing about this is that you understood it, you knew that you could easily, you know, perish in this thing. Like, if you died, you're just a drone, like, there's no shame in dying with this thing. So if someone just, for the lulz, told you to attack someone who is in the middle of, like, a 15-person ball of enemies, you could carry it out. It's like, why not? Let's do it. I was hired by a rogue to fly into the sun. I got paid. There are very certain interesting memories that I have about these characters, and one of them is trying to convey a good roleplay without any sort of spoken dialogue, or in this case, written dialogue. So, for example, if I was hired to, say, you know, escort someone, I would actually do it. Like, they would notice that I would assume a very specific, like, formation, like, manually, a formation onto them, and the moment they moved even just a little bit, I would just instantly follow them. Like, it was, hey, this drone is, like, actually acting like a drone, even though obviously there's a human player behind it who obviously has better things to do. But it was fun. It was fun in a very kind of silly way. Although, to be fair, there was also when I personally had much more free time. And so silly things like that actually, you know, were something that I would do. I must admit that playing this character, like this kind of character, became slightly less interesting when people start to figure out how exactly this thing operates in terms of roleplay constrictions that we ourselves imposed on ourselves. So for example, a player hires you. You're told to go after a specific target. You are expected to not stop even if that target starts to take cover. So, in other words, you cannot... like, you have no sense of self-preservation. Even if that thing starts hunting a battleship, you cannot break off. And so people start doing exactly that. It was amusing at first, but, you know, there's just so many times you can just follow the rules of your own roleplay and just give up in a fight by allowing yourself to get shot by whoever the guy is trying to hug close to. Hey there guys, and as you can probably already tell, Future Spazzy here. As usual, I cannot really think and talk straight while doing in-game stuff, so in a moment, the past me is going to encounter a few players, and then since I could not physically participate in this fight, I went on this huge tangent about the misgivings about this character and the difficulties and whatever. Afterward, since I had no time to record more footage for that day, I resorted to hop into Connecticut just to test out these new guns that I've actually never seen before. Now the reason why I'm narrating this part of the video is that at the time of working on this episode, and by that I mean being about 19 minutes in, I realized that it will just have to be an introduction episode. Now, regarding the guns, spoilers, I found out the hard way that they're kinda terrible, but while you're given a chance to watch me get melted by my opponent, let me talk a little bit more about this character, about its role and its purpose of our Let's Play, as well as elaborate on a certain realization that came to me after I made it, in which I kinda think that it might have perhaps not been a good idea in the first place. So the Firestalker drone is from a very different chapter of Disco. Without assuming any moral high grounds, I can safely tell you that the faction was made as this huge middle finger to, at that point, existing AI faction. Now, one of the gimmicks was that we were limited to, in terms of any amount of in-game chat, to those 10 quick message slots filled with predefined messages. And the whole idea, the gimmick, so to speak, was that with just those 10 quick messages and our behavior, we'd still provide a better roleplay quality than the existing AI faction did with what I so fondly referred to as toaster speak just a moment ago. But Discovery seems to have changed. Apart from the fact that the player count has dropped a little bit, it really kind of seems that most people know one another across characters, so this means that there's a certain amount of what I can only describe as politeness and balance when it comes to fights. So in other words, instead of hiring a Firestalker drone mercenary to boost your numbers, the enemy will just willingly ask one of theirs to not engage in order to keep the fight balanced. So the current type of Firestalker drone is somewhat unneeded. Or, again, that seems to be the case. It's really hard to tell. I've only been around for like slightly less than a week. I've had 2 separate encounters in Liberty so far, and it seems that the unofficial factions that make up its core activity right now seem to be much more inclined to provide a very chivalrous experience. So the fix for this is remarkably simple, and it's just that I need to turn this drone into a repair ship. A support ship is more often easily hireable than a offensive one, but honestly only time will tell. And so, this is our second roleplay character, the Firestalker drone 004. In the future episodes, we will set up a few more backup characters, just so we have a much wider range of choices when it comes to where we want to roleplay, not just Liberty, so stick around. But until then, this is Spazzy Dragon, aka Syndromes, fly safe, and I got some trading to do.